Hi everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts, and today I'm going to be showing you 5 cards that I created with this My Favorite Things stamp set called Fluttering Friends. This is a not too shabby design team project, so you can purchase this stamp over at Jamie's shop, and I will have it linked down below. You can see that I also planned out my cards, so I did a few card sketches onto some scrap piece of paper. And I like to sometimes plan out my cards, especially when I know I'm going to be creating multiple cards with one stamp set. That way I know exactly how much I need to stamp of each image. And I can also kind of figure out my color scheme before I start coloring. So I knew 2 of my cards I wanted them to be rainbow, and then 3 I wanted them to be kind of blue and green and turquoise colors. So you're going to be seeing a lot of blues, and I am using my Copic markers. I'm using 2 markers for each image, and even though these dragonflies are quite small, they did take a long time to color because of all those little patterns on the wings. I really wanted to highlight them, so I used different markers for each little pattern. So the coloring did take longer than I thought it would, but I'm very happy that I put in the extra bit of effort to highlight those patterns because I feel like real dragonflies, if you look at their wings, there's multiple colors in them. So yeah, I really liked how the coloring turned out. Included in the stamp set are 3 different types of dragonflies, and they were actually what prompted me into getting this stamp set, is because I have a lot of butterflies in my stash and a lot of bumblebees, but I don't have any dragonflies. And my mom loves dragonflies, so I knew I was going to create her Mother's Day card with this stamp set. And these dragonflies were a lot of fun to color. You can see I pulled out a lot of my Copics, and most of these Copics I have barely used. I don't really use a lot of blue markers, I've noticed, and I think that's just because I color a lot of animals, and their fur is typically more neutral brown kind of colors. And I do a lot of flowers, and there's not very many blue flowers out there, so it was nice to use up my blue markers, and it was really nice that I didn't have to refill any of these markers because they were nice and juicy. But I chose very vibrant colors for my cards. I wanted them to be very eye-catching. And something I did a little bit different for these cards is I left a lot of white space, or a lot of the pattern paper showing, which I don't typically do. I like to do scenes, and I like to overdo my cards, so if there's a lot of white space, sometimes I just have to put something on it and ruin the beautiful white clean look of a card. But I don't know. Today I just left the white, and I'm very happy that I did, because the white offsets all those bright colors and just helps your eye draw into those dragonflies. So they're definitely different than any of the cards I've created on my channel before, but I love how they turned out. So like I said, I'm using 2 markers per image. They are quite small. I'm adding, for the dragonfly and the butterflies, I'm adding the shadows towards the tips of their wings and then where their wings meet the body. So the highlight is going in the center. And then for those flowers, I added the darker areas towards the center of the flowers, and then the tips of the petals I left for my highlight. So included in the stamp set was 1 butterfly. And again, this is a beautiful little image. I love how the illustrator added those patterns in. It just adds such a cute, whimsical touch, and I wish I created a Mother's Day set with this stamp set. If you follow me on Instagram, and if you don't, you should. I will have it linked down below. But if you follow it, you'll know that I made a lot of bug-themed Mother's Day cards this year. I don't know what it is about bugs, but I think it's, again, the fact that I can color them in such bright colors that I don't typically use. I've definitely been drawn to the insect stamp sets this year. So I'm just going to finish up this last butterfly, and then I can start my first card. Like I mentioned earlier, I knew I wanted to create my mom's Mother's Day card, so I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start by cutting out a stitched rectangle die from some Bristol cardstock. Bristol's really nice for ink blending, and I always tend to forget that. So I pulled out my Bristol for this, and I'm going to add some Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink to the bottom of the panel, and then in the center I'm going to add Broken China, and then on the top of the panel I will add Twisted Citron. And then I will go over each color again to get a more seamless blend. But like I said, on Bristol, it just blends very nicely. I'm definitely not working as hard as I would if I use Nina. But Nina does also look good. You just have to work a little bit harder to get a better blend. And the brushes that I use for ink blending are by Picket Fence Studios. I will have them listed down below. I'm going to spray some water onto this panel with my Distress sprayer. And then I'll pick up those drops with a paper towel. And then just to add a little bit of shimmer, I'm going to take my Kiritaki Fine-Tech watercolor in the color white, and I'm just going to flick on some of that with a paintbrush. Again, I'll use the paper towel to blot up the excess, but that does add a really pretty shine. It's hard to see on camera. I knew I wanted to cut the word mom out from the center, and these letter dies are by Echo Park. So I'm going to die cut the word mom from the panel, and I'm going to keep those letters and that inside of the O. I will inlay the letters back inside the panel, but I first wanted to add some dimension behind them. So off camera, I die cut each of those letters out from heavyweight white cardstock, and then I'll just layer those three behind the colored mom letters that I die cut from the panel. And just to help them stand out even more, I'm going to add some silver embossing powder to the bottom tips of all of the letters, and when I dipped them into my silver powder, it just left like a blunt line, which I wasn't a fan of, so I'm just taking a brush and brushing that powder upwards to get more of an organic, kind of like a paintbrush stroke onto those letters. And then now I'm just going to heat set the silver powder. And I liked how that turned out. I did feel like the embossing powder helped those letters stand out even more. So now I'm going to glue those white letters behind the colored ones. And again, I'm adding 3 layers of white, and here you can see how thick that turns out. It almost looks like a chipboard piece. I'm going to glue my ink blended panel onto a slightly larger black mat. So now I'm going to go ahead and inlay those letters back into the panel using my art glitter glue. And then here is where you can see how that embossing powder really helps to make those letters pop from the background. Here you can see with the O, I popped the center of the O back in. And now below mom, I'm going to add the rest of my sentiment, and that says enjoy your special day. That does come in the Fluttering Friends stamp set. And now I'm just going to arrange some flowers, some leaves, and then my 3 dragonflies around the sentiment. I'm going to pop some of the elements up, while others I will glue directly onto the panel with my art glitter glue. I fussed around with these dragonflies for a bit, but ultimately I decided to glue this blue one to the bottom right corner. This dragonfly was kind of curved, so it worked nicely and it didn't cover up my sentiment too much. And then I did pop up each of the dragonflies. I'm just using some thin strips of foam tape. Okay, and then I'm going to add some ATG tape behind the black mat and adhere that to my white card base. Now you can see the wings are hanging off the side of the card, but I knew I was going to hand deliver this to my mom, and my mom probably would have screamed if she saw me cut off a majority of the dragonfly's wings, so I left it intact. To embellish this card, I'm going to add some Trinity stamp pearls, and I added them kind of going in a diagonal. Here I'm just cutting off the rest of that foam tape from the wing. And that's going to complete my first card. I'm going to add some shimmer to the letters as well as my dragonflies and the flowers. Okay, so there's the completed card. Here is a close-up. I think this turned out really pretty. It's definitely one of my favorites. For my second card, I'm taking a strip of Neenah cardstock. You can use Bristol. Again, Bristol is easier to blend with, but I had this scrap of white Neenah next to me, so I just decided to use that. I'm going to ink blend some Wild Honey Distress ink, and then at the top of this strip, I'm going to blend on some Squeezed Lemonade Distress ink. And then I'll just go over each color one more time to get a nice blend. And then I'm going to, like I did with my last panel, I'm going to spray some water onto the panel, and I'm also going to flick on some of that Kuretake white shimmer paint. Just going to clean up my glass mat, and then I'm going to take a bunch of the images that I die cut. I actually did not die cut these. I ran them through my brother's scan and cut. So I wanted to use up those flowers, and I colored them all blue and yellow. I really love the combination of blue and yellow together. And then I did color up some of my dragonflies in blue colors, so I thought the yellow would definitely offset the blue nicely. So here you can see I'm arranging the strip with my different die cuts, trying to figure out which dragonflies I want to use, and I like the blue, and I think, yes, the lighter blue with a little bit of purple added in. And I found an arrangement that I like, so I'm going to commit to it and glue down my die cut pieces. I popped up the dragonflies with some tiny strips of foam tape. For some of the flowers, I'll pop them up. Others I will glue flat. I really like the difference in dimension. I think it adds some nice interest. And here is my first card where I leave a lot of white space, which is something I typically don't do. I did stop myself successfully this time, and I'm glad that I did. To help frame in this strip, I'm going to add some black strips of cardstock behind it. Just attaching those with my art glitter glue, and then I'll trim off the rest. And this strip is as long as an A2 card base, so it's 5.5 inches tall, and I think it's about 2 inches wide, maybe 2.5 inches. I'm going to stamp my sentiment to the right of my card panel. I've chose You've Been on My Mind, and again, this comes in the Fluttering Friends stamp set. I stamped that with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and now I'm going to attach my strip to the left of the card base. And that's going to complete my second card after I add some embellishments, and I'm going to use the pearls again. I am obsessed with these embellishments, and pretty much all my embellishments now are from Trinity stamps. I just love using them just to accent a card. So I'm attaching all of those with art glitter glue, and that will complete my second card. Here's a close-up. For card 3, I wanted to create a rainbow card, so I'm going to mix yellow, blue, and red inks to create a rainbow. You don't need to have every ink to create it, since the colors will mix to create those secondary colors, which would be green, purple, and orange. So when you mix the yellow and the blue together, in the middle it will create green, the blue and the red will create purple, and the red and the yellow will create orange. And I just ink blended that onto a little square. And at first I thought I wanted to create my shaker card, so I'm going to cut out one of these frames from an ornate square die by Elizabeth Craft, but you can see my rainbow square was too small. So instead of wasting it, I thought I would try to work with my other images for the other rainbow card that I had in mind. Originally, I wanted the sentiment panel to be a circle instead of a square, but I actually kind of like how the square looks. So I'm just arranging all of my rainbow colored dragonflies and butterflies. You can see I put them in rainbow order going around the square. And now I'm going to stamp out the sentiment. I chose Happy Birthday, Enjoy Your Special Day. I stamped it with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and now I'm going to clear heat emboss it. And then I wanted to tie in the black that was in the sentiment, so I will mat this rainbow panel onto a slightly larger black square. And then I'm going to take my card base and my butterflies and dragonflies again. And I'm just going to play around with them and figure out the arrangement that I want. So I'm kind of creating a half or a 3/4 circle using the insects and the flowers. And you can see I'm trying to match the color coordinated dragonfly with the area of the rainbow on the panel. So the yellow and red dragonfly is towards the yellow and red ink blended area, as well as the purple, blue, and green. And as usual, I will glue some of the flowers with regular art glitter glue, and then some of them I'll pop up with foam tape. I like how the layout looks, so I'm going to go ahead and glue down my sentiment panel. And then all of my dragonflies and butterflies are popped up with foam tape right now. Going to arrange them back into their circle again. And I like how that looks, so I'm going to peel off the backing on all the foam tape and just pop them all up. And I think out of all 5 cards, this one's my favorite. I just love the white space and then the really bright colors, with the addition of the little bit of black to help draw your eye in towards that sentiment. I think this one just turned out very visually appealing. And then I thought, to embellish this card, instead of the pearls, I'm going to take these Trinity Stamp clear iridescent gems, and they're called fairy rocks. They're super pretty. I'm going to scatter a few of them around the sentiment, and then I'm also going to dot the centers of all of my flowers with these gems. And I think that looks really pretty. And they kind of take on the color that's underneath them. So when you shine them in the light, they're just gorgeous. All right, so that's going to complete my 3rd card. Here is the close-up. For card 4, you can see I did another ink blended square panel. I added some water splatters to that. And now I'm going to create the shaker card that I originally wanted to do for my last card. So I'm going to add acetate behind this ornate square frame. And I'm going to add 2 layers of foam tape behind this. And I'm just using my Scotch 3M. I like to use my U-line tape for wider borders, but since this is so skinny, I thought it would be easier to use my Scotch. And if you remove the backing on your Scotch foam tape, you can bend around it so you don't have to cut all those little corners out. For my shaker bits, I'm using a Trinity sequin pack. I think this is called Springtime Mix. And there's just some really pretty rainbow colors and then sort of like a silver iridescent sequin in there too. I'm going to arrange the rest of my flowers that I had die cut into a little cluster on the bottom left of this shaker window. And I'm attaching everything with my art glitter glue. I didn't want to add any more dimension to this card since it already had 2 layers of foam tape. And then I'm going to attach this rainbow colored butterfly towards the top right of the shaker window. I'm going to add ATG tape behind it and attach it to my card base. And then for my sentiment, I chose Thinking of You, and I will just attach that with my art glitter glue to the bottom of that shaker window. And that's going to complete card number 4. Very quick to put together. And I just love the colors. Here is a close-up of card number 4. Okay, so I'll admit I didn't feel like doing any more ink blending, but this pattern paper looks almost exactly like the ink blending I did for card 1. This pattern paper is by Pink and Main, so you can create this background with the Salty Ocean, Peacock Feathers, and Twisted Citron Distress Oxide inks to get basically this exact background if you wanted to recreate it. I cut it from a stitch rectangle, and now I'm cutting the top and bottom with a scalloped lace die set from Heartfelt Creations. Between those 2 border pieces, I'm going to add some white, so there's a stitched white rectangle behind. And in the white areas, I thought it would be cool to stamp out all of the dragonflies. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm using my Memento Tuxedo black ink for this because I will be coloring them in with my Copics. And I didn't use the butterfly or the flowers for this card. I just wanted to use the dragonflies. And I'm using all 3 of them that came in the stamp set. And you can see I'm stamping them in different directions. Some are upside down. I wanted it to be very random, kind of like a pattern paper was peeking through those lace borders. All right, then off camera I colored all of those dragonflies in. I chose purple, turquoise, green, and yellow, and a little bit of blue to color those in. And then for the sentiment, I'm going to stamp To My Wonderful Friend on my top lace piece, and then on the bottom, I stamped out You've Been on My Mind. And I just love the simplicity of this card, even though it did take quite a while to color in all of those dragonflies. And then I just had to, another one of my cards, I had to add acetate. So I'm going to glue these lace panels onto a rectangle which I die cut from some acetate. And I'm attaching them with my art glitter glue, and then behind the acetate I'm going to add foam tape so that I can pop this acetate panel over the dragonflies to create some dimension. And I really love how that looks. The acetate just makes any card look expensive to me. Very elegant. And that's it. This was a really simple card, but yet kind of complex with the coloring, I guess. So I'm going to add ATG tape behind my white panel and just attach that to my A2 card base. And then to embellish this one, I chose the pearls from Trinity Stamps again. I'm going to pour some of those onto my glass mat. So I'm just going to glue those pearls onto the lace panels with my art glitter glue, and that will complete the 5 cards that I created with the Fluttering Friends stamp set. If you love this stamp set as much as I do, you can find it over at the Not Too Shabby shop. I will have a 10% off discount code listed down below. And I'm almost at 3,000 subscribers, guys. So if you haven't subscribed yet, you should. And the faster you subscribe, the faster I can get out a giveaway for you guys. So thanks again for watching. Let me know which card was your favorite, and I'll see you next time. Bye.